Just getting set up. We'll be starting shortly. Hi, everybody. Thanks for waiting so patiently while I get things together. A lot of things to do to start a space. I think I've got them all done. Auto recording is on. The regular recording's on. So welcome, everybody. Hey, Dr. M, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, George. Thank you so much.
Great. I see a few friends in the audience. By all means, request a mic. This is going to be very informal. It's unannounced. It's impromptu. We're winging this on a wing and a prayer. But here's the background real quick. Dr. M and Samantha Postman and I have been discussing polymathery for a while as part of the Medici community. We've been staying away from that word because, we all three of us hated the word. Speaking personally, I don't like the word polymath because it contains the word math, and my belief is that a lot of people are scared by math and intimidated by it and don't like it and think it has something to do with math, and therefore they'd be turned off by it. But as we discussed it more and more, and as I read more about it and its use in the Renaissance and today, I became more comfortable with the term, and we began discussing it and getting, each of us, a little more comfortable with it, even with calling ourselves something like that, because it kind of felt, I don't know, bragging, arrogant, grandiose or something. I was never comfortable with it. I'm still not comfortable with it. We'll talk about that a little later. That's part of the polymath syndrome. We're now realizing that's a real thing. So I've got a few new thoughts from even the time we talked, Dr. M. I think you're going to be surprised and delighted by a couple of things that I just realized like 10 minutes ago thinking about this. But that's what it is. First of all, I would love to know if people know what the word means. I mean, maybe you came here because you saw the strange word polymath and you wondered, what the hell is that? I'm going to find out about it. Let's give it a shot. And you're here and you don't know what it is. If you do know what polymath is, send me an emoji of your choice. If you know what a polymath is, I will explain what it is in a moment. But one of the reasons I want to do this is to get an idea of, is this a concept that's kind of out there and in use? So I see a couple of people, but yeah, okay. All right. So it looks like most of you has at least a passing familiarity with the term. It basically means somebody who's mastered 2 or 3 or more, skills and fields. Somebody who is well versed in, often people say, at least 3 different fields. Not just studied, because you could study biology in college and the arts and philosophy and all kinds of different subjects, have considerable knowledge of the subjects. But polymathery implies that you're doing something in it. You have mastered it, brought it to fruition in some way. You can kind of perform it. You can do it. I've studied a lot of medicine, for instance, in doing focus groups of doctors, but I couldn't be a doctor. Dr. M is a physician, accomplished physician who practices every day. So he could say that's one of his fields. Speaking for me, I mean, it's too long to rattle off, and it embarrasses me every time I do it, which is part of the deal here.
George, I think part of it is that we are embracing it.
Yes,
so
we are trying to. We are working on it. We're working on it. We're working. The eventually may take by the end of this session may take a few weeks or months. We're going to be proud polymaths, maybe with a button, maybe with a T-shirt or a hoodie. I don't know. maybe a baseball cap. But we're going to be proudly proclaiming ourselves polymaths and getting people to understand us, because some of our spouses don't understand us. So our spouses are very, very accomplished people, but are not polymaths. It's a different style. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. It's just a different way of doing things. And so it. By the way, anybody who'd like to join the conversation, please request the mic. Come up. I'm going to be holding forth a little bit, but I love people to interrupt me. Love people to make comments on my comments or ask questions or say, "Whoa, wait a minute, stop there, George. Give me an example," or "I don't. That's not clear," or "I have something to add to that," or that kind of thing. Love it, love it, love it. I'm kind of well known on Spaces for the interactive mode. Anyway, I come to Spaces from the focus group world. I invented the telephone focus group, and I've run over 10,000 of them over 50 years. So, and focus groups are all interactive. So that's my thing. I've even written articles about how the interactive mode got invented, why it was invented, why it's necessary, why it takes people to a deeper and different level than the calling on people, the cop mode, I call it, calling on people mode. So I love it, love to see, I see at least one person, Luisa, I don't want to embarrass you, but she is a polymath, I believe, from some past contacts with her. So anyway, there are people judging from looking at your, she has requested the mic, so let me, add her. Yeah, good. Hi, Luisa.
Hi, George. Nice to listen to you.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
By all means, join us. Jump in, interrupt me.
Thank you.
Don't put your hand up. Don't wait. Don't wait for me to call on you.
Awesome.
Only put your hand up if it's an emergency. It's like you just said something that has to be corrected. We got to stop and call on me. That's what hand up means. Okay.
Also, I think that's what makes you a great polymath. The capacity to listen and to reflect and maybe adjust your vision. I think that's an amazing quality.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's just quickly define polymath. And there is no well-accepted definition. In fact, Wikipedia talks about the fact that the reason they haven't published a list of polymaths, they have lists of everything else you can think of. And it was so conspicuous that they haven't published a list of polymaths that they felt the need for an explanation. And they said, I'm paraphrasing, of course, they said something like there's no generally accepted definition. A lot of the people we consider polymaths were polymaths before the word got invented in the 1600s. It would be very controversial to call people polymaths, but there are some people who are undisputed polymaths, and the king of the polymaths obviously is Da Vinci and Ben Franklin, and you can go on and on and on. Walter Isaacson, a polymath himself, has written books about. He writes biographies. Almost all of his biographies are about polymaths. They're right off the top of my head. Walter Isaacson's written books that I've read on the Wright brothers, who are just idols of mine. Ben Franklin, Steve Jobs, Da Vinci. So, I mean, there are three of my here. There. I don't know if he wrote a book on Galileo. Don't remember. He's another one of mine. So what's a polymath? Obviously, it's somebody who's adept, who's well versed, who's mastered, not in the sense necessarily being the world's greatest expert, but mastered on some serious level of mastery. 2, 3, 4, 10 different fields. Just ran into an interesting fact that blew me away. It is astonishing but not surprising. You know the difference between astonishment and surprise? This is really cool.
I don't,
The
George.
difference
Please.
between Noah Webster, the great dictionary maker, was caught. This is an apocryphal story, of course. He was caught in bed with the upstairs parlor maid by his wife, and she said, "Noah, I am surprised." And he said, "No, my dear, you are astonished. It is we who are surprised." I love that. Anyway, what was I? So polymathery, as it's also called, in makes a person a different breed of cat. Why? Because here's what happens when you've mastered several different fields. And again, I want to say that I tremendously admire the single-minded specialist. There are people who are passionate about one thing and one thing only, and eat, live, sleep, breathe that one thing. I tremendously admire them. We need them desperately. So this is not anti-specialist. Quite the opposite. I bow down in front of them. I admire their single-minded purposeness, and I, it's. However, in a world, this is a world where we have. It's obviously the information age. That has led to the world of flooding, of overwhelm, overload. I call it the age of overload because people don't like to admit to being overwhelmed. So the information age has led to the age of overload. The age of why? Because it's too much information. You could, if you in Da Vinci's time, know everything there was to know in medicine. Now in Dr. M's time, there's no way he's going to know even a fraction of what's known in medicine. And I'm told, I don't have independent verification of this. I've seen it quoted many times, but people may be quoting the same thing. But doctors tell me that this really is true. That every 3 to 5 years, medical knowledge doubles. Doubles. Medicine. Is that true, Dr. M?
Yes.
Wow.
So if you just compare the curriculum of any medical school in the U.S. that is official, so we're basically osteopathic or allopathic medicine, yes, you would see that.
Wow, that is
the material reflects
that is so mind-blowing. I mean, think about that. Medicine every 3 years doubles. So how can anybody know all of medicine? So, and the same thing is happening in computers, in AI, in every branch of technology. It's going crazy. So we all have to specialize. But there's the rare breed of cat, the polymath, who has a thing. Brace yourself, Dr. M, because I'm going to hit you with a word that's going to knock you off your chair. So strap in, hang on, put your helmet on. The polymath has mastered polymastery. It's polymastery. Several different fields. So what happens when you master several different fields? Well, they inform each other. The problem-solving methods of engineering are very quirky and singular to engineering. Now, I haven't studied engineering. That's not one of my fields. But I've been taught engineering principles by several close friend engineers and business colleague engineers. So let's just take 2 examples in engineering that's practically doesn't exist in any place else. Destructive testing and forcing functions. Destructive testing is how Elon Musk develops rockets. You build it as best you can. You do it. You um, you subject it to as much stress as possible. You break it, and you see where it broke, and then you take the part that broke, and you either strengthen it or redesign it so it doesn't break the next time. Then you do it again, and something else breaks, almost invariably, and you fix that, and then you do it again. So he did, I don't know, something like 12 rockets before those rockets ended up on the barge, being able to self-land. But every single time, he put out statements that people thought were arrogant and crazy, but I understood him and other polymaths understood him. He said, we had a successful experiment. The rocket fell in the water, and we know exactly why. See, it wouldn't have been a successful experiment if it fell in the water and you didn't learn something. That's a failure. But what happened was the rocket fell in and they figured out what was wrong or what needed to be adjusted or corrected or refined, whatever. They did it, and it got closer. And it almost made it, but fell in the water again. They fished it out and figured it out, and they did it 12 times. And now it's pretty reliably landing on the barge without any human guidance or intervention. So that's destructive. So my friend Ron Richards and I started a company 52 years ago called Telesession, which was the first social audio group. And I did a lot of experiments on conference calls and group discussions, audio only group discussions. We found they were incredibly robust. They didn't fall apart into side conversations. We can't have a side conversation here. A thing that's a fact about audio that's often overlooked. So it can't degenerate into side conversations. So we tried all kinds of things, 25 open mics, on and on. We did, and it always worked. So Ron said to me one day, let's do some destructive testing. I said, what's that? Never heard of that. He explained the engineering concept as I just explained it to you. And we said, okay, let's run the worst audio only room ever. We went out on Earth Day, 1972, I think, the first Earth Day. You could look it up. But it was the first Earth Day, literally. We went to Times Square in New York, and there were mobs of people demonstrating against each other, carrying placards. There were what I called the American Legion types, people on the right wing, people who were in favor of the Vietnam War, who thought we should be in Vietnam defending the Vietnamese, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had what I was loosely calling the hippie types. Those are the people from the left wing who were very much against the Vietnam War. And they were literally engaging in fistfights on the street, Times Square. It was semi-riot. And we had flyers prepared, and we handed out flyers to get people to come to a conference call. And we I want to make sure we're getting this auto recording because this is the first time I've really told this story in detail. So we handed out flyers inviting people to come to the session. It was kind of hard to do. You had to call the conference operator or the phone company and give your phone number, and she'd ask to call you back. And we made all kinds of arrangements with the phone company. So net of it was, we had 300 people online, all open mic. There was no muting ability. There's no hand raising ability. I see your hand up, Diane. I'll call you in a second. There was a lot. We had no talker ID, so we couldn't tell who was talking. You know, the little thing next to my name on the bottom, next to host, the little blue thing. I call talker ID. I don't know what the Twitter people call it, the social audio people call it, but I've been calling it talker ID. It's badly designed in Twitter, but it's usable. Anyway, we had no talker ID. We had nothing. And the people got on the line and they started yelling at each other. And I was a PhD student in group dynamics and educational psychology. And I wanted to see what would happen. So I bit the side of my cheek and bit my tongue, forced myself not to talk, and let them go at it. So it was 300 people, open mics, moderatorless. No moderator. I said, welcome. We're here to discuss the Vietnam War. Who'd like to start? I'm going to sit back and you won't hear from me for maybe a half an hour. Go to it. Have fun. Bye. That's the way I started it. Really bad moderating technique, as moderating and facilitating technique goes now. But I did. So what do you think happened? It didn't. They started yelling at each other, as you would expect. And they yelled at each other for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm very proud of the fact that I did not jump in to stop it or make it more constructive. I let it go. I wanted to see what happened. Would they all hang up? Would they continue at it for another hour? You know, what the hell would happen? Well, what happened was very quickly, within 5 minutes it started, 3 minutes maybe, it started to moderate itself. Moderate in the sense of become less extreme. And they began to calm down a little bit. And they began to stop hurling insults. You know, it's very unsatisfying to hurl insults at somebody you can't see. You get very little feedback. You can't see that they're getting pissed off and perturbed and angry and upset and hurt, which is what you're trying to do. It's very unsatisfying. It doesn't work. There's no feedback loop. So they kind of ran down and they started discussing things. And I could go on and on. I want to get back to polymaths. But net of it was they started into a rational discussion. And after about 3 hours of this, that was another destructive testing thing. It was not only too big, but too long. I don't know, maybe after about 2 hours, they came to consensus. I mean, the American Legion types and the hippie types came to consensus. What was the consensus? They agreed to disagree about whether we should be in Vietnam. Should we be waging the Vietnam War? They all agreed from both sides that the government had no right to grab literally kids off the street, put them in a uniform, shove a gun in their hand, and ship them off to Vietnam to fight our war. That is conscription. They all agreed that involuntary conscription was immoral and probably unconstitutional. Those were in the days, by the way, some of you are too young to know. That was in the days of the draft. There was a draft. You didn't get to tell whether you went to Vietnam or not. You didn't get to volunteer. We now, and that view prevailed eventually, and we became an all-volunteer army because there was consensus on both sides. But that's what Ron and I as polymaths were able to do, and we brought that kind of engineering. It was part engineering, his knowledge of engineering, my knowledge of psychology, our knowledge of each other's stuff, and a whole lot of that allowed us to bring that to social audio. So the point I'm making in a long belabored way, well, I hope interesting, is that polymathery or polymastery cross-fertilizes one field with another. The problem-solving methods you use in one field carry over to another field. The problem-solving methods that I use in inventing magic tricks as a magician carry over to my inventing other things in business. Okay, the way I pose a problem with my magician friends, we have long sessions inventing magic tricks. the way we present the problems, the way we solve them is different than the way anybody else does it in any other field. But it works in every field. So I could teach a course in creative problem solving. Why? Because I've been doing magic since I was 7 years old. I've invented dozens of magic tricks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Diane, you wanted to say something. We're going by. We're in group interactive mode. Anybody who'd like to request the mic, do so. Don't wait for me to call on you. Jump in when you'd like. But Diane has her hand up, so I would like to honor that. Ask if she has something to say.
Hi. I had
Hi.
a couple of. Hi, I'm Diane. I had a couple of things to say when you were talking to Dr. M earlier about the knowledge of medicine.
Go ahead.
We also have to take into account the various different purges of medicinal knowledge in general.
Yes. Say a little more about that.
Because you guys were talking about how it doubled. But think of where we'd be if those purges hadn't existed.
So did you say purges?
Yes, the purges of knowledge.
Right.
Book bannings.
Right.
Massive book bannings.
Yes.
Have destroyed so much knowledge in the last 100 years, 500 years, millennia.
Right.
The loss of the Library of Alexandria alone is just like,
yeah, that was
we're all just pissed off that does not exist anymore.
Right, that wiped out almost all of documented human knowledge. That one incident, that one event.
And then there's I believe there was a ruler in the Middle East who every ship that came into port, they would copy the records.
Right.
The fictional, non-fictional.
And now there were good purges.
And you were sent out with a copy of it. They kept the original, but they copied the whole thing for you and sent you out with a copy.
Right. Yep.
But they collected that too.
Yep. Diane, are you a polymath? I'm looking at your bio and I see Intel analyst.
That's kind of becoming my own epiphany right here. Yes.
Yeah, because I see Intel analyst, I see freelance writer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Knows much, doesn't say anything. It sounds to me, forgive me, I don't want to psychologize, but it sounds to me like
essentially growing up, I got a psychology degree. So
okay, so it sounds to me
why I didn't bother to go get it officially in college.
Right. So you are. It sounds to me, and don't let me put words in your mouth. Push back on me if I don't have this accurately. But it sounds to me like you are a polymath who's not quite comfortable with that, as I am also not completely comfortable with that.
It's imposter syndrome. Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah. It's imposter syndrome and a bunch of other things. We
have it the worst because of.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we have so many different avenues that we can see.
Right. Well, here's me. Let me speak personally. Somebody comes in, George, what do you do? I cringe. I hate that question. What do if I answer, what do I do? I'm a psychologist. I'm a magician. I'm a violinist. I'm a windsurfer. I'm a sous vide cook. I'm a coffee roaster.
I did band for 5 years and I did chorus for 3 years. Yep.
It's like I could go on and on and on. There's like 12, 20 different things I've mastered. So I'm an author. I'm an international speaker. I'm a this. I'm a that.
Master's degree in creative and professional writing.
Right.
Yep.
I invented MindSkills. I invented the telephone focus group. I invented decision.
I have written in articles out there, but that's
right.
I mean,
so
how many polymaths haven't written anything about Star Trek?
Right. So yeah. So how is it if you don't mind my asking you a few personal questions, feel absolutely free to say that I'm getting a little too personal here, but
you're good.
Okay. Well, you tell me, how do your friends, spouses, whatever, how do they react to your, let's call it polymathery? See, listen, folks, for that.
The
You hear what
sigh
she
is
did?
telling.
You
The
hear
sigh
what
is
she
telling.
that was a
I can't
sigh.
verbally
Okay, wait,
explain my
stop.
reasoning on
Stop.
things.
I'm gonna show you all you an incredible moderating technique that I stumbled on once. Did you hear Diane go? Oh,
There was
okay,
definitely a
right.
sigh.
Did you hear that, Diane?
Yes.
Okay, now here's the moderating technique. See if we could do this. This is going to be a wild experiment, and not everybody can do this. So let's just try.
Don't test me on a certain kind of math.
No.
Right now.
Can I ask your permission to talk to the sigh, not to Diane, but to talk to that sigh? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Sigh, can I call you sigh, or is there something else you want me to call you?
No, Diane is fine.
No, sigh. The sigh. I'm not talking about Diane. That's yourself.
The sigh was exasperation.
Okay.
And
that's what I want you to do. I want the sigh to talk to me. What's that about? Talk to me. Tell me what the sigh is. You said, I heard exasperation. There was something else I didn't hear.
Frustration. Being unable to verbalize my perceptions of the world properly in order to get people understand my decisions.
Right. So there's a certain, and what is that exasperation, frustration, etc. about? It was somewhere.
Life in general.
It was about polymathery in some way. So what part of polymathery? We were talking. The context, if you remember, was how do you describe what you do?
Psychology.
But it was the difficulty. We're talking about the difficulty of describing all these different fields and the reactions that people have. My specific question was, what reactions do the people around you, or especially people who are closest to you, have to your polymathery? And then you went, you did it again, by the way. So what was that sigh about?
That sigh is just...
There it goes again.
Being disappointed about not being further and not doing more, but not figuring out how to get the fuck to not more, or to more.
So now you've identified. Let's pause on that for a second, because I think that really deserves some deep exploration. The polymath always feels we haven't done enough. I feel that I'm not as good a magician as I could be. Now, I'm recognized as one of the 200 leading close-up magicians in the world. But I know my deficiencies. I know what I can't do. I know what I'd like to work on next. I know what I failed at. There are some sleight of hand I can't do. There isn't too much of it, but there's one or two things that I've never been able to master, and I'm frustrated as hell over it. Never mind that I teach professional magicians sleight of hand. There's a couple I can't do, and that's what I'm focused on. Because we are unabashedly ambitious. We want to know and do everything. And of course, that's impossible. And of course, so we walk around in a permanent state of frustration. We are always frustrated. We are frustrated because there isn't enough time, obviously. I would do magic full-time and psychology full-time, and I'd run spaces morning, noon, and night, and I'd continue to write my book morning, noon, and night, and on and on and on and on. But there isn't enough time, so we're all in a permanent state, and we have to learn how to manage that frustration. It's really tough being a polymath. It's so much easier to be a specialist. It's really, as much as I admire stuff, and there are single-minded, really crazy specialists that manage to lock out everything else. We live in a world of bright, shiny objects. We live in an ADD world. We're continually going down rabbit holes and following trailheads. And we can't get enough of them, and we can't get down them fast enough. And we like
it's where we get our dopamine from.
Exactly. You got it. So
George, you know how many things I want to do, but I just don't have the...
Exactly. Catch your wave. Were you trying to jump
in
to
do anything? Yeah.
Even
as happy as I wanted to learn Gaelic officially.
Yeah.
after reading it in print, I wanted to learn, aside from television shows, how the language was. But
Right. Yeah, we're always wanting to learn languages or whatever,
new shit.
and yeah, new shit. Right. Catch it.
I just had a quick question.
Sure, catch.
So is
What
polymath
should I
more
call
like...
you? What's your name?
You can call me by my name.
What's it?
You can call me by Mindy.
I'm still not quite catching it. Say it again.
Oh, you can call me by my name.
Wait, what's your name?
Mindy.
Mindy. Okay. Sorry, I just didn't get it. Mindy, yes.
I have
a
quick question. Is like a polymath more of like an interdisciplinary thinker?
Yes, exactly. That's good.
And so
very good way of putting it.
So you're bridging the gap between a bunch of topics,
exactly,
to come up with the solution.
Right. So that's another point that I was going to get to. Let's get to it right now.
Learning a whole bunch of languages, and I want to still do it. I just don't got it.
Exactly.
The tank is empty.
Exactly. So
the tank is empty.
So
the wanting to learn shit.
Right. So it's not only, my point is, it's not only you take the methods and problems and skill sets and knowledge from one field and apply it to another. In this world of ultra specialization, we're all in silos. So, but a lot of the information and languages, or a lot of the information, as Mindy was saying, is between the silos. So you need us polymaths to bridge those gaps.
To connect the fucking dots.
Right. You need them to bridge the gaps. Is that what you were getting at, Mindy?
Yes, that's what I was getting at.
Yes, because
we connect the fucking dots.
Right.
We see the web.
Right. So
we see the web.
Right, so when Elon Musk
see the
comes
big
along,
picture.
And Elon Musk comes along and he sees the interstices. He sees the gaps. He sees, and everybody else thinks, well, what an arrogant bastard he is.
I just generally, personally,
agree.
Fuck Elon Musk.
Well, I love him.
I think he's a genius.
Yeah.
The way he thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
He is, but he's also an asshole.
Yeah, but see, a lot of polymaths are. I'm sure. Now, I idolized Da Vinci, but I'm sure I wouldn't have liked him. But there's some background noise in where you are, Diane. So
I recognize he's
your mic.
But he's still an asshole.
Yeah. Okay, but that's irrelevant to the conversation. And some polymaths are capable of being assholes because they dazzle you with their knowledge in different areas. Some of them use it as a self-esteem crutch, which is not a good thing. Some are justly and rationally proud of their accomplishments in multi-fields. That's one thing. It's another thing flaunting it and bragging about it, and the current term is flexing about it. That's not a good thing. That's not a healthy thing psychologically. Let me ask other people who wanted to jump in. By all means, jump in. Don't wait for me to call on you, please.
When you flex, people think you're arrogant. Even though,
right, exactly. In fact,
even if you think it's coming from a good place of sharing knowledge, if they don't know who you are specifically, they'll just think that you're showing off.
Right. And Frank Lloyd Wright had an interesting quote. I don't know if he was a polymath or not. I know he was unbelievably accomplished in architecture, obviously. But he once said, he said, and I'm repeating in jest, I once had to choose between false humility and well-earned arrogance. I chose the latter, and it served me well. So it can come across as somewhat arrogant.
Serves men well.
Yeah, it's right.
It doesn't serve women well at all.
Well, tell me more about that, Kara, because I think that it can come across really badly with women or be taken badly.
I mean, I recently, my most popular tweet that I've ever had was about this very thing, about how, autistics and ADHers, well, we like to info dump. We like to info dump a lot, and people think that we're just being arrogant and showing off our knowledge, but we're really just really interested in what we're talking about,
exactly,
and really want to share it. Really, that, and we want to share all those different connections and all the patterns that we see that nobody else notices.
And they roll their, and they do what? They roll their eyes, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Kara again, right?
There she goes. Well, some people do. Some people are like, wow, I've never thought about it like that.
Right, but they're,
oh, I didn't know
exactly,
that.
Right, and you know, marry them. But
well, I can't marry them all.
right.
But
I get you.
As much as I would like to.
Right. But see, you weren't. Now, my wife is not a polymath. She's a highly accomplished psychologist, well-known psychologist, and is more single-mindedly directed. And she gets my polymathery. I get her specialization. And we're just in awe of each other's knowledge and depth and breadth. I want to distinguish one thing. I just thought of it. By the way, would you consider yourself a polymath, Kara?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we got a bunch of them up on board here. So, oh no, I forgot the distinction. Oh yes. Okay, so there's a specialist who goes deep, but not so wide. There's the person who's the proverbial. He's a mile wide, but it is an inch deep. That's not the polymath. That's the dilettante. Okay, the word for broad interests and that kind of thing, but not with
so goddamn eclectic. It's annoying.
Right, and now so there's the gourmet and the gourmand. The gourmet is more focused and knowledgeable and authoritative, but the gourmand is just a big fat glutton who's eating everything in sight. So so there's a dilettante. We are not talking about being a dilettante, although I must say I am a dilettante in certain things, maybe like wine. That I don't know a lot about wine. I'm an expert in coffee. I am not an expert in wine. So I'm a dilettante. I guess you'd have to consider me in wine and beer, but not. Now I've done hundreds of focus groups on beer and wine. But I wouldn't consider myself knowledgeable. So the dilettante is very broad, but not very deep. The polymath is perhaps maybe a little less broad, but broad and deep at the same time.
Right, exactly.
So Dr. M, if I can speak about you, is not only an accomplished physician, he's accomplished in various aspects of computers, including robotics, web design, other kinds of things. The list goes on and on, as it does for all of us. The list goes on and on. So, and they're deep. I can hold my own with any magician in the world. He could show them, and this has happened many times. A very well-known, very really terrific magician shows me a trick. I can show him some improvements. Now I can't necessarily do the trick, maybe because it may involve some sleight of hand that required him years to practice. But I, as an expert in designing magic and doing workshops on magic, I can help him improve something about it, the psychological presentation, his clarity of purpose in doing it. What is he trying to accomplish? What's he trying to have happen in the audience? And on and on and on. And I can get him thinking about that because magicians don't think about psychology. Almost none of them do. I can name 5.
No, it's all about.
I know thousands.
Big dick, nerd energy.
Right. I know thousands of magicians. I know 5 that are interested in psychology. I can, Teller is one of them. There aren't too many others who really can discuss the psychology of magic. So I'm applying psychology in one area to another area. That's the polymath, and it's almost like almost feels embarrassing, sort of. It just
an embarrassment of riches.
Exactly.
How do other people not see this? That's all you end up thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
How do other people not see this?
Yeah, why aren't other people just in awe of, we can take almost any field, almost anything, and learn it in ridiculously short amount of time. Because one of the things that polymaths master is they master mastery. They master learning, speed learning. We can do speed learning. Almost every polymath that I've met.
I did sign language as a
Yeah,
kid.
well, okay, that's a
Learned
good example.
Spanish,
I'll tell you what.
French,
Okay, so I was in
bits
graduate school.
Japanese,
right.
bits of Chinese.
So let me tell you my story. I was
wanted to learn Latin,
right.
but didn't get a chance to do it because high school didn't offer it.
Right. Hold on for a second. I was in graduate school. I'm going for a PhD in psychology. I'm taking 18 credits. I'm taking magic lessons from the greatest magician in the country every week. I'm having to practice his stuff.
Doing Tai Chi and Kung Fu.
So I decided, well, I'm going to become a psychologist. I'm going to need to be able to take notes. So I enrolled in a shorthand course. I learned Greg's shorthand, which I can do to this day at court reporter speeds. I can take shorthand, Greg's shorthand. But I learned it. But how long did it take to learn? It took me, I don't know, it took me a week or two to learn the entire Greg shorthand alphabet. And now it was a matter of practice. So I would sit in like psych classes, take shorthand notes. Now, most of the stuff they taught me in graduate school was useless, so I didn't keep the notes. I just would take the notes, and I would throw them in the trash can afterward because it was totally useless. What these people were saying was completely nuts. So, but the point is that I learned the Morse code in half an hour. I learned my friend Harry Lorraine, the very well-known memory expert, he can go through a deck of cards in about, and he's 96 years old now, I think. He can go through a deck of cards in, I would say, 15 seconds, 15, 20 seconds, just cards from hand.
3 Rubik's Cubes in about 60 seconds. Not me, but one of the guys I served with.
Was what?
3 Rubik's Cubes in 60 seconds.
Yeah. I know.
That's because that's the only amount of time Rubik's Cubes he could find around the room.
Yeah. And so Harry can memorize a deck of cards in 15 to 20 seconds. Your cards, you shuffle them, you hand them to Harry, and he memorizes. And then you say 3 of diamonds, and he says, "That's card number 27." And you count 27, and damn, that's the card. So anyway. I
almost wish you had the eidetic memory, but
no, he's taught. It's a system. It's a system. So language he's memorized. He's taught it. He wrote it in books. He taught it to me, but I never practiced it. So I never practiced it. But you construct a castle. It was called a memory castle. It's a whole technique. It's a very detailed technique that Harry invented, and it really works. But it takes months to years of practice to do it, and I considered it not one of my highest priorities, so I didn't do it. But anyway, but the point is that
the mind palace.
Right. We need this session is about the care and feeding of polymaths. So what do we need? What do polymaths need in life? Let me pose the question to the audience, to people who are speakers or anybody who'd like to come up and join us. If you are a polymath or you know one well, what do polymaths need from other people?
Yes. Yeah. Acceptance would be nice. Support.
Understanding.
Tell me more. I heard acceptance and support. Tell me more about what acceptance is. What do you mean by that? So what? I'll play devil's advocate for a second. So what if they don't accept you? Maybe you need an acceptance of their lack of acceptance. I don't know. You tell me.
Self-acceptance too, right? Because we grow up in a society where polymathery is not encouraged. In fact, it's discouraged.
Get a real job, Dr. M.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And then we even there's all kinds of advice. You have to niche down. You have to pick one thing.
You have to narrow it down. You have to narrow it down. You have to narrow it down.
Right. Everybody keeps saying that to you, but that's not true. because you are that's, yes, other people have to narrow it down. And it also is, there is some truth in it too. See, you want to take all of these different fields that you have mastered. It would be nice if you could take them all and put them all together into one magnificent thing, which very few of us end up being able to do. I have been able to do it in MindSkills, which I'm quite proud of, and that's why I'm able to get up enthusiastically in the, in the morning, and I have had no diminution of enthusiasm because all of the fields I've gone into serve my purpose, which is the understanding of the human mind, and but I've taken all of these different areas, magic and psychology and writing and all this, and marketing, all this stuff, pull them into one thing. And wow, does that feel good. And when you do that, people call you a genius. Now, some of you have seen my famous tweets that I send out all the time. I don't have it in front of me here, but winging it off the top of my head, it says something like, stop calling me a genius and stop calling me brilliant. I am no smarter than you are, except that I'm in my 70s. I have devoted half an hour to an hour every single day of my life since I was 7 years old to learning a new skill, sometimes multiple skills at the same time. And so after so many years, of course I can talk with almost anybody about anything. Of course I can do that. So, but not because I'm any smarter than anybody else, but because I've accumulated skills, not knowledge. Jeanette, talk to me. Hey, how you doing? Haven't talked to you in a while.
Good. How are you, George?
Haven't talked.
Thanks for having this space.
Oh.
I heard you talk about polymaths the other day, and when I saw your tweet, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go listen right now." So I'm really excited you're having this topic. I guess the one thing I wanted to say, and maybe somebody else has heard this too. I'm not really sure where I read this. It was when I was in college. Somebody said that, or maybe it was in a book that George Schultz, I think it's George Schultz, that has started Starbucks, and he's in the Seattle,
yeah, Schultz, not George. I forgot his
market.
first. Schultz, I forgot Schultz's first name, so I don't think it's George. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But anyway, it was him or somebody else that said, during the course of your lifetime, you will have 6 or 7 jobs in different fields, and I don't think not being able to specialize in something is necessarily a bad thing.
That's exactly.
Because I'm like,
right.
Oh, go ahead, George.
No, that's exactly what we've been saying. Exactly. Yes, in fact, there are several different kinds of polymaths. Some people start out life with multiple interests. Like I had, 8 hobbies when I was a kid, and these things, and they turn out to, many of them survive into adulthood, and so you could say, from 7 years old, I was a polymath. But other people learn one field. This is what Jeanette was talking about. You might learn one field thoroughly, and then move on to another field, and then another field, and then another field. So it's kind of like a serial entrepreneur. It's a serial polymath or serial mastery of individual things that eventually sum up into, okay, I've had these 8 different jobs, and if they're the same jobs, kind of in principle, then they don't inform each other. But if you had a job, I had a job as a psychologist, then a market researcher, then a marketing consultant, then an author, then those are very different skills, very different skill sets, and they each inform each other. So you could be a serial, or you could be in serial or in parallel. That's my point. Sorry to belabor it so long. But yeah, serial or parallel polymath. And I don't think one is better than the other. Or it's just different. It's the way it works out sometimes. Some people are involuntary polymaths. You know, you master a job and get fired, and now you can only get another job in a completely different field. You have to relearn that field. So sometimes polymathery happens to you, and it's not kind of by your psychological disposition, maybe even against your disposition. Now, but ADD people, there's got to be a it's got to be a misrepresented sample. There's got to be more polymaths who are ADD than not, and more ADD people probably end up as polymaths. I have no data, totally speculation. I want to label it as such. You want to argue with me? I can have no proof to argue back with. Just a hunch, which, as Feynman says, is what science is. You make a wild ass guess, make a hunch, then you go see if it's true. So that's
usually the data finds you.
Right. That's a good way to put it. So it's So where are we with polymathery? Who wants to say anything else on any subject of polymathery? I have some questions.
Can I just say one more thing,
Jeanette?
George?
Yes, Jeanette, go ahead.
Okay. All I wanted to say is, I'm always trying to learn new things. I'm always trying to better myself. And I've spent my life doing that, I think probably because I saw my grandmother doing that. She went from being, maybe all in the same field, but she went from business college to getting married, to running a tavern, to running a business, to running a farm, learning everything about the farm.
Right.
And then when she retired, she was learning more things. Like she was learning how to like fix a chair, how to recover a chair, and flowers, and planting things, and dyeing the feathers from the chickens, and making hats, and doing all kinds of different kinds of things.
Yeah. So her intellectual courage knew no bounds. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not of this. She didn't engage in that kind of negative self-talk. I can't do that. I've never been trained in it. No, she just do it. So we have learned to, one second, I'm just inviting Dr. M back again. He must have had technical problems. We've learned to approach areas with unimpeded intellectual ambition. I mean, none of us really think there's any field we really couldn't learn. I mean, that's like a weird idea to me. But I'm aware that everybody else has that idea. Oh, I could never learn language. I could never learn this. I could never learn that. I could never learn the cello. I could never. Well, I'm in my 70s, so I probably couldn't ever learn the cello. But there are certain physical limitations. I certainly couldn't learn to dance like Brezhnev. But Brezhnev can't dance like Brezhnev anymore. But so there are realistic limitations. But we don't really allow ourselves to have too many limitations.
So for clarification,
yes.
So being a polymath means you have multiple skills in your skill building. So what happens when you gain all these skills? What are you supposed to do with it?
Have fun.
Have fun.
Well, it's not what you're supposed to do with it. What's the best to do with? Well, how does one apply? You go through life. You have wonderful childhood filled with hobbies, and you have a wonderful education filled with learning all kinds of things, and then you may have a few jobs, and then what do you do eventually? My reflection on that is this: that and I've written some articles in the MindSkills Playbook. You can find it in my profile. You you refine and develop, nurture your sense of purpose, the meaning of your life, meaning what are the most important values? What do I consider to be most important? And then how can I take all the things I've learned, all the fields I've mastered, and apply them to something that fits what I would love to do? So, like in my case, I've thought for many, many decades, 3, 4, 5 decades,
It's like fucking herding cats.
Yeah, well, but herding cats, they're all inside of your own head. But see, eventually it
That's the
clarifies.
problem.
Well,
You're trying to
the
herd cats.
Chinese have an old saying that still water, what is it? Cloudy water left still clarifies. So, you might have maybe a big clouded mess. Eventually, if you do enough self-reflection, and I have a method for doing that, and we did that last Monday in a space. I have a thing called the What Game. You can go and listen to the space from last Monday. You ask yourself, you find something that excites you. You say, what about that excites me? What about that excites me? What about that excites me? And you drill it down into your primary source of excitement, which we call our life purpose, sometimes formulated as a life mission or calling. And you then say, okay, in this world, given the world today, which is very different than it was a few years ago and than it will be in 2 or 3 years, given the possibilities and opportunities now, what could I be doing? What should I be doing? I'm doing things in MindSkills we couldn't do 3 years ago. We didn't have social audio on the internet. We still had conference calls, but we didn't. There's all kinds of things. I'm writing a live book. Obsidian was only invented a year ago, but I'm writing it in Obsidian. The whole Tools for Thought movement was only invented 2 years ago. Well, yes and no. It was invented actually 35 years ago with Max Think and Think Tank. So I've been using them for 35 years, but they've only become popular in the last 2 years. So there are all kinds of things I can do now to pursue MindSkills and to start the world on that track that I couldn't do 5 years ago. So you look out at the world, this super abundant, amazing world that's filled with information and sources of information. And you say, what could I do given these 6 fields? Put them down on a piece of paper or on a page in Obsidian or Roam or Logseek or one of the other tools for thought, Notion. You put them down and juggle them around, move them up, move them down, rank them. Say, what do I really want to do with my life? What would be my ideal job? This gal Jessica, is she here? Let me see if she's not here. I know she's traveling the world at the moment. This gal Jessica came to one of my demonstrations of GPT-3, of OpenAI's GPT-3 artificial intelligence thing. And I showed her how it can write tweets, it can write articles, it can do all kinds of things, it can help generate writing prompts, how I use it in my thinking, She went completely crazy. It hit every value she had. She is a polymath. She had various skills in computers, but wasn't an artificial intelligence expert. She saw that she was literally screaming on the phone, on the Zoom call. It was a Zoom call. She was literally screaming, and I just kept, feeding her enthusiasm. I got a big kick out of it, and upshot of it is, she's got her dream job now because she's working for OpenAI. She contacted the company immediately after my demo. She applied for admission into being able to use, as a beta tester, being able to use OpenAI. I don't think it's open at the moment. I think you had to apply for it, Dr. M, didn't you? They made you apply to get it?
Yes.
Yeah, to get it. Okay.
Yes,
So
that's right.
you have to apply and tell them what you're going to use it for and all that stuff. So she got, admitted to that. She started using it. She, I don't know what the details of the story was, but in some way she got an interview with them. They must have picked up on her enthusiasm and obvious competence, and said, "Well, man, we want somebody like that. She's gonna eat, live, sleep, dream AI, as she's doing, as I spoke to her recently, and she's living her dream job right now." She says she got her dream job. Why? Because she pursued. I think I met her in Ship 30 for 30. So that's a writing thing. So she's a computer person, but she's in a writing thing. So she's clearly a polymath, learning new things, but then pursuing your polymathery or polymastery, you exposes you to opportunities the ordinary people just don't get exposed to. You see things, and things just present yourselves. It looks magical. It looks like, The Secret and the law of attraction and all that crap. It's not. That's just magical thinking. But it looks like magic because why? Because the world is filled with thousands, tens of thousands of opportunities, most of them not relevant to you. But if you're a polymath, more of them are relevant to you than are relevant to almost anybody else. So the polymath is continually being barraged with opportunities. I have so many more opportunities than I can possibly think of or take advantage of or do. So our problem is saying no. Our problem is not getting ideas. Our problem is culling and sorting through ideas. And we have 100 ideas a day. So the idea is, what about the one per week that we can act on? That's a real major problem. Some of us have mastered that kind of decision making. Some of us are driven crazy by it. Somebody was trying to get in. I wasn't looking.
Yeah,
Kira, go ahead.
it's Kira. Yeah, I just wanted to share all the different things that I've mastered over
I'd love to hear that. Yeah,
the last half a century.
Rattle them off, but I want to ask you, rattle them off proudly.
Oh, I am very proud of all
go
of
ahead.
them.
Okay, because some of us rattle them off apologetically.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
That's why I said that. Go ahead.
I have a bachelor's in philosophy and a master's in religion, and I became a professional powwow singer and learned 3 native languages in my 20s. I am a herbalist. I've taught myself how to identify all of the birds that live in the area where I live now by sound. I've created a hummingbird habitat and pollinator habitat over the past 9 years at my property. I rescue animals and save injured wildlife. I served with FEMA for almost 10 years doing disaster recovery.
Oh, wow.
And and left a whistleblower. Mm-hmm. And now I, for a living, I refinance, I process refinances and equity loans.
Wow. I used to do, one of my clients was, anyway, I did focus groups of the emergency managers of the top 50 cities in the country on a regular basis. And in fact, we had the emergency manager of New Orleans on about 3 weeks after the New Orleans, the hurricane hit New Orleans. Forgot the name of the hurricane, but he was on there briefing all of us, and it was unbelievable.
Katrina,
that was it. Yes, of course. So, some of us, our polymathery allows us to do. I did focus groups in every area you could think of. Every area of medicine.
I forgot something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Significant. That's lifelong. I am an accomplished poet, and I perform the poetry and I'm a environmental organizer, and gearing up to organize and using the same principles that I learned in environmental organizing to get ABA banned.
Okay, so I know a lot about you now from that. I know that you are both what is called, erroneously, by the way, but is nevertheless called right brain, left brain thinking. There is no right brain, left brain, but as a poetic analogy, it is true that there are some things are more linear and logical, some things are more analogical. That's what it's. So what it's telling me is you are both an analogical and logical thinker. You can do both. Not everybody can do that. It's relatively rare.
I have a big middle brain.
Yeah.
A huge like synthesizer in the middle there.
Right. So an Einstein was such a great physicist, and he said this, not because he knew more or better math and physics, he had a better imagination. So Einstein and Feynman were great physicists because they were also great poets. So that's the idea of the Renaissance. I wanted to mention that. I forgot. I intended to mention this at the beginning. The Renaissance had this very revolutionary idea that we can develop all of our capacities. We are not just born one way or another with these aptitudes for certain narrow things. That the universal man, as it's called in Latin, and the Renaissance man, the polymath, as it's called in Greek, the idea was intentionally become adept at all of the different major human fields, which are science, philosophy, the arts, the spiritual areas, and 2 or 3 other ones, and each of those have many, many, many subdivisions and all of that. So become adept at all of them, because my knowledge of the violin and of classical music informs my being able to do other things, and it informs my appreciation of other things. I can appreciate food because I can appreciate Tchaikovsky, as crazy as that might sound.
It doesn't sound crazy at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I was one of those people that was never really good at math.
Right.
Until I took a class in college called Art, Math, and Nature.
Yep.
And we studied the Fibonacci sequence, and then we started making art, based on that kind of thing. And then I suddenly, I got it all, and I realized that, math really is kind of the language of God, because, everything is designed so perfectly.
Right. Or the universe, or however you conceive of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and then we're part of it. It's part of us, and we're part of it. Yeah.
So what I want to do is bring back what I'm hoping all of us can do is go forth from this discussion and in the rest of our lives and foster that Renaissance idea, the Enlightenment idea, that we can all develop our capacities in our multiple capacities. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Oh, you can't concentrate. You're all over the place. No, it's not that. It's that we are deliberately learning and fostering and mastering and nurturing different capacity, all of our capacities, all sides of us. And because they all feed each other. And that what we need to get the society to realize is that, yes, specialization and concentration is important. Of course. And the multidisciplinary person is really, really important, desperately needed, and to be celebrated and encouraged. Trevor, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
George
Welcome.
Silverman, where do I recognize the name? Are you into NLP and
No,
hypnosis? No? Okay.
no, no. I mean,
So,
I know about it, but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm into it or an authority on it.
oh, okay. I understand. Sorry, it's just I thought I recognized your name very much. Seems like a very interesting space. I'll
Thank you.
chill around, and if I have something to say, I'll maybe raise my hand and pipe up again.
Of
Thank you so
course.
much.
Do you consider yourself a polymath?
You know what? To be honest, I don't.
Okay, no,
I
it's
was
fine.
kind of always told that I was really, really bad at math throughout my entire life, and then as
No,
I'm
no,
getting more into computer,
polymath has nothing to do with math. Polymath is somebody who's mastered 3 or more different disciplines. That's the problem with the word polymath because a
oh,
lot of
then I'm
people,
definitely an aspiring polymath.
okay, that's a good way to put it. I love that. It's yes. So there are a lot of people. I'm so glad you brought that up. Let me riff on that a little bit. There are a lot of kids who are aspiring polymaths, and I remember the way I was treated when I was a kid. It was like, George, concentrate on something for God's sake. You're all over the place. And I was told that from kindergarten through PhD studies and beyond, and all the time. Concentrate, learn some, you need to find your niche. Niche usually means particular industry, profession within a particular industry. I'm not a niche player. And so what we need to do is encourage people to be aspiring polymaths. It is a wonderful thing to aspire to mastering multiple disciplines so that you can apply them all to each other. Really important. Something wonderful. And if you step on that with a kid, that's one of the worst things you can do. It's criminal. It's just terrible. It's horrible. You should never do that. You've got to encourage. There are kids who are all over the place. And it's infuriating. It's frustrating. They're difficult kids to bring up. I know from personal experience, both of me personally and my kids. And they are tougher kids, no doubt about it. And it's much easier for them to have a kid who concentrates on one thing, and they get the lessons in the thing, and you drive them to the lessons, and you buy them the stuff that they need for that thing, and it goes on, and they're pretty concentrated, and they're well behaved and not all over the place. And the polymath kid, the aspiring polymath, who could be 7 years old or 70 years old, is all over the place. And I mean, I have friends who literally, their greeting to me is literally, "What are you into these days, George?" And they find it charming about me. They like that, and they kid around about it. And all of my friends who aren't polymaths, the ones who aren't polymaths, kid around about it. What are you into next? It was sous vide cooking. It was coffee roasting. It was, whatever. What are you doing these days? But
see, that's interesting. That's interesting, George, because the way that I'm kind of structuring it for myself is I'm kind of literally unfolding. To be honest, the when you described the mastery of 2 or 3 different things, that's kind of my life script that I'm writing for myself. I'm only 24, and I want to learn computers. I want to learn yoga, and I want to learn hypnosis, right? And those 3 things.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm basically learning as much as I can in those 3 fields, and I'm going to combine it.
And you can learn about them all at the same time.
Yes.
You don't have to do them serially. Right. And here's a little tip. If it's not obvious, keep asking yourself, what can the things I'm learning in this field, how can they be applied to the other field? You will see things that nobody else sees. You will become a problem solver that sees things that the people who are experts and concentrated in the field can't see. I swear to you that will happen. I guarantee you that will happen. That you will see things that the experts that can't see, because the experts know what's not possible. You don't know what's not possible. So you can look at it from a much more creative point of view. There are a whole lot of reasons why. But polymaths can even though they're not as accomplished in a particular field, they can help somebody in that field perform at a just off the charts level.
I absolutely agree. And I was just checking out some of your profiles. Kira, I love the neurodivergent insurgent. I absolutely love it.
Yes, isn't that
I
great?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I work on a roof, and they say that the only requirement for working on a roof, at least I say it, is you have to just be a little bit crazy.
Right. Well, see, maybe a lot of polymaths are neurodivergent. I don't know. I think it's going to get. By the way, I looked up. It's trending in Google. It's been increasing for the last 10 years or so or more. The looking up the word polymath. So it's going to get gradually more popular. We're certainly pushing it in the Medici community, but it's going to become more and more recognized. People are going to, especially when we get our buttons in our hats and our hoodies. Just kidding. But maybe we will. I don't know.
Oh, hell yeah. You guys need some NFTs too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we will play around with that stuff. But the point of doing that is to send the message, hey, folks, we need this interdisciplinary cross-fertilization, cross-pollination. Without it, we're just a bunch of automaton in silos who are not talking to the other silo next to us. And we're all just going through life like zombies. So we are needed more than ever before in all of human history. Because we weren't as needed in the Renaissance. Because there wasn't so much knowledge in the Renaissance. Now there's so much knowledge. You need synthesizers. You need visionaries. You need people to pull together from one crazy field that's totally different, seemingly, than another field, but has some procedures, methods, whatevers in them that they can benefit from. Or you spot a gap. Hey, what we need is, Kara, go ahead. Just jump in. Don't raise your hand. Just jump in.
Okay.
Jump in with you.
All right. So I wanted to say a little more about what you were saying about how, it's good to be a specialist, but specialists are missing some key things because they're specialists. So I think that's really obvious in the medical world right now. I've been misdiagnosed probably more times than I've been diagnosed. And the only diagnoses that I've received that have been correct are the ones that I've given myself first. And
interesting. Yeah, when I've gone to doctors, I usually ask them questions, and they say, they're kind of amazed that they didn't think of asking that question or doing that test or whatever it is. Doctors are memorizers. As Dr. M and I have discussed, most doctors,
really
they're memorizers of symptom lists, and then they match up the lists with what you present them, but they're not good
thinkers. That's the traditional Western model. Yes, for sure, that's the traditional Western model. Right. My personal approach, I would love to be a doctor. It's too expensive to get into medical school right now. So it's something I might do later in life, but if no one has heard of the field of functional medicine.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I highly recommend checking it out because it's a fundamental. It's not necessarily a change in the technology. It's a change in the philosophy of
So there's an example. Instead of looking at pathology, you look at health. Instead of preventing disease, you look at how do we foster health. And it's a different way of looking at it. Now, any polymath has studied some other fields where that is done. Like engineering is not about curing what's wrong with the engine. It's about building the damn engine in the first place. And so there are quote in quotes health oriented professions you could argue some branches of art are, but they're not. And that's why I got out of psychology, because in the day, not now, because there's a lot of healthy trends in psychology, but back in the day, 50 years ago, it was all about pathology. What's wrong with people? And learning the difference between neurosis and psychosis, and memorizing all the different neurotic behaviors and character disorders and psychoses. And I could rattle them off, and I could give you all the definitions and all. I wasn't the slightest bit interested in labeling people. I could. I wanted to
Well,
know
there's a lot of fundamental flaws too in psychology, especially in understanding neurodivergence.
Right.
I mean, the fundamental flaw being, that we are going to continue to experience this world this way because we actually, that sensorily experience the world the way that we do.
And thank God for the neurodivergence, because without them, we wouldn't have Musk and Jobs and Da Vinci and Michelangelo and
Einstein and all of the Einsteins that are alive today.
They were all I probably Feynman wasn't. I don't know, but see that and even the whole concept of neurodivergency is. There's some great soundness to it, and there's also a lot of bullshit about it too. So it's a mixed bag.
100%. That's to be honest. When we discuss the mind and psychology and things like that, I think it's very important, in my opinion, to recognize that they're all models. Right, every system that we make is a model, for understanding. And the map is not the territory. I was just
going to say that exactly. The map is not the territory.
Exactly.
So most people. But if you're a polymath, you know that, because you're getting hit over the head with that all the time. Any field you're in, and if you're in 2 or 3 fields and they all reinforce each other, you damn well know that a model isn't the reality. But models are valuable. And they have their functions, but they're not, So anybody else?
So when I discovered that I was neurodivergent, I burned out and diagnosed my own autism, and then it was confirmed by a specialist who knows about adult discovery. I mean, I'm a female born in 1969, so it's not going to be discovered until you burn out.
Right.
But when I discovered it and looked into it and really looked at it, I was like, oh, this is how the Western tradition understands, because I'm native, contraries. And I already knew I was a contrary. So I already had a positive way of looking at my difference. So I don't, I don't see the neurodivergence as a negative thing at all.
I
love that.
It's just misunderstood.
It's sometimes it's a superpower. There are professions and things where that's really a great help, and there are other ones where it's a terrible hindrance. So, Dr. M, go ahead.
George, so in a world, we were talking about this last night, where in a world where everything is going towards super specialization, our problems require multidisciplinary approaches, and we just have increasingly less people who can do it. So I think last night one of the bigger revelations for me was that there's actually very much an acute need for polymath folks, basically. In medicine, everybody wants to specialize. And then it definitely, you have the case where the same set of symptoms go to different providers of different specialties, and different diagnoses come out. Also just by nature of specialization, that each particular specialty doctor really only thinks of problems in their own terms,
right,
in terms of their specialty, and it is limiting.
Yes.
And it's utterly infuriating for patients like myself, who have rare conditions and have to diagnose themselves. And then the doctors treat you like you're doing it because it's fun for you, and you're just interested in diagnosing yourself, not because you're desperate to find out what's really wrong with you. No, that's not why. And then, you tell doctors because you diagnose yourself and then they're pissed off at you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the system, it's not working. It's not working at all because it's not designed to work.
Hey, Dr. M, you just made me think of a polymath joke. You know what a psychiatrist is? A psychiatrist is a doctor who is practicing. Wait a second. A psychiatrist is a physician who has studied medicine, which he doesn't practice, in order to practice psychology, which he hasn't studied.
Yes, I agree.
No, us psychologists make that joke about psychiatrists, but it pisses off psychiatrists. It pisses off psychologists more than you can imagine. You ever want to get a psychiatrist apoplectic, you tell them that joke, because it's so true that it's just, we'll just.
I don't have to try to piss off the doctors. I walk in and they're immediately pissed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
Because they can't figure it out.
Exclusively deal with Eastern medicine and holistic practices and naturopathic doctors and functional.
Yeah, we're getting a little off track though. Carol, I wanted to know, had you heard the word polymath before you came here?
I had heard it a long time ago when I was in graduate school getting my master's, and I was studying with the Dr. Reverend Matthew Fox and his Creation Spirituality University.
What was your if you can get in touch with it, a day or two ago, what was your, if you had heard the word polymath, what would be your attitude toward it? By the way, I'm getting hit with a gigantic...
very positive.
Positive, okay, good, okay.
Yeah, I cannot imagine being anything else.
So you would have included yourself in that for a long time. Okay, I got it. So it's part of your self-image. Okay.
My mother is also the same way.
So I want to understand more. Was a understand more about
microbiologist, and then then she retired from that, and she ran a women's shelter, and then she retired from that, and now she's almost 80, and she's still running an organic berry farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she always encouraged me to learn whatever I wanted to.
One of the things I'm trying to do in running these kinds of spaces on polymathery is to understand a little more about what people's attitudes are toward that word coming in. Do they think it's weird? Are they admiring of it? Are they disparaging of it? Are they, I don't feel I have a handle on where it stands right now. It's definitely
not a commonly used or well-known word.
Sure. Exactly, for sure. Yeah, and that's an advantage because we can own that word. We can make sure people, we can define it and describe it in ways that people will understand it and accept it more and encourage it more. So I think it's probably a good thing, but I haven't fully made up my mind about whether that word should be used in various contexts like the Medici community and other places.
I've always just said, Renaissance
man,
or,
what's the woke and PC way of doing that? You can't say Renaissance man anymore, can you?
Not for myself because I'm a woman, but I don't care if a Renaissance man says he's a Renaissance man. I don't care.
But what if I'm talking about it in general? If I can't talk about the Renaissance man, but Renaissance person. Renaissance person sounds weird.
Renaissance humans. That sounds
weird too. I don't know.
Renaissance.
Well, I like weird things.
Renaissanceian.
So that's okay.
Renaissanceian. But
Renaissanceian.
I have to find some way to dance around that because you can't say Renaissance man anymore. And
I'm sure
no sense.
Everything would be okay if you
in this context. It's clear that I'm not being gender or whatever, but it's clear. But it might as well avoid it if you can. It's it's
Well,
it's a
yeah.
really needless. There are a lot of needless controversies in this world, and that's certainly one of them.
What,
Needless,
to
needless
change
in this.
language to be more inclusive?
No,
Is
no, no. In the sense of,
is
thinking that associating the phrase Renaissance man was in some way sexist or whatever, because there are lists of Renaissance women. There are polymath women. I need to practice rattling them off, but certainly Marie Curie was one of them, and there are several others.
Have you ever heard of Hildegard of Bingen?
Yes. That's the one I was trying to think of. Thank you. Hildegard.
Yeah.
She
So
was
I studied her in depth. She was amazing.
Tell us about
she
her
was
a
like,
little, not in great
okay,
detail, but give us the short one paragraph version of
all right.
Hildegard.
So she was a 13th century German abbess.
Yes.
Who was an artist, a musician, a scientist, an herbalist, and she wrote scathing letters to the Pope and got away with it.
Not only got away with it, she's a saint.
Yeah, she was sainted. And if you look at her, I have a post that I had made recently about a painting that she did of the universe, and it looks almost exactly like that, like the picture of the model of the human cell that's been going around.
Huh.
It looks almost exactly the same, like her painting that she did of the universe in the 1300s in Germany looks like this model of the human cell, So she tapped in, to something deep.
Yeah. Oh my God.
In her, mystic, she was a mystic and a prophet and an amazing woman. And so that's the kind of, that's the kind of person I see myself becoming when I'm an old lady.
Right. And we have to publicize the female polymaths of the world, because it's always the guys. It's always Da Vinci and Ben Franklin and the Wright brothers and all those. And it's really important that we mention that. And one of my heroines is Adelaide Harmon. She was the wife of a famous magician, the most famous magician in the United States. And he died abruptly. She was his assistant, but she was the first and only female assistant who really performed as an equal. She wasn't really an assistant. She was an equal. So it was really, and then her husband died. They had their own private railroad cars, and it was unbelievable. They were fabulously wealthy, and he died abruptly in Europe, and she just took over the show. And Adelaide Harmon traveled the world as the world's greatest, first and only female magician. A very close friend of mine is the world's leading expert on her, and she does Adelaide Harmon's show. She became president of the Society of American Magicians, and she did she did so many things. But anyway, there are many of them out there. And Marie Curie is the patron saint, of course, and it's wow. This is really interesting. I put it up there. One of the findings here. One of the things that I was looking for is if I put up polymath into the name of a space, will anybody show up? And will we have any kind of intelligent discussion? I think Dr. M, we got our answer, didn't we?
You're right. Yeah. And actually, Stephen here in the audience just DM'd me something, which is, from Google.
He's the master of the Google machine.
Yes, he is, of course. And basically, it shows, I DM'd it in the group with Samantha, but basically, it is just a graph showing that over the past 2-3 years, and especially just in the past couple of months, for some reason, that polymath as a term is what's the metric is interest. It's a graph of interest over time.
Yeah,
there is
right. In fact, I put it in a DM to you this morning. I found the same thing.
Okay.
I found I
Awesome,
did an SEO search of polymath, and I forgot on what. I've got an automatic thing, and Yes, I say it's growing in popularity,
Obscurity.
at least in in obscurity. No, in the opposite.
No, so that's what Steven's graph. The thing that Steven showed me is like it's a interest metric from Google.
Yeah.
Presumably from Google search data.
Yeah.
So it shows that it's going further into obscurity, actually, I suppose, because
my data
the
shows
y-axis is
my
interest.
data shows the opposite. I mean, it shows a little dip in the last year or two, but the 10, 15-year trend is very gradually and very distinctly up. That we may be measuring different things, of course. What I'm measuring is the frequency of the search term of people searching for polymath on Google, and it's definitely increasing.
So maybe it's less known, so people are searching for it more, maybe, or trying to find out what it is.
I don't know. I don't know. It's going to trend. I predict it's going to, because there's such an obvious need that needs to be fulfilled and encouraged, and it's so obvious once you point it out in this age of specialization. The importance of integrators is so obvious that people are going to get it. I mean, and there's no reason to no reason to push back on it, except some people feel inadequate that they can't perform in multiple fields. But if they get that, the world is made up of specialists and generalists, and they're both wonderful and they're both needed, each in their own right. And they need to be cooperating and talking with each other and admiring each other's differences, different styles, different epistemology, and different epistemological styles. And that needs to be done. Is there anybody else who wanted to jump in? I think I'm running out of steam a little bit. So,
hello.
Hey, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. My name is Lavidius, and I want to thank you, Mr. George Silverman, for this space.
You're quite welcome.
I just found out so many things about myself, and I've always been a polymath. I just found out about polyhister, and I am just excited about it. Thank you very much. This is really going to allow me to put all those skills together. I've noticed that
you absolutely just made my day. I'm telling you, I'm sitting here with goosebumps. That is so.
I realized
there's a character in Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, which was a short story.
Yeah, La Bourgeois Gentilhomme.
Yeah,
yes.
he said, I forgot the name of the character. Maybe you know. He was surprised to find out that he had been speaking prose all his life. So you have been speaking polymath all your life, but you just didn't know it.
I really have been speaking polymath all my life, and I feel so liberated right now. I am not an oddball. I'm not a weirdo, but I love being a weirdo space. But
listen to her voice. Listen to that voice.
Yeah,
Isn't that amazing?
Wow,
that's cool.
I am like, I don't know. I'm excited. This just really sparked so many things in me. And, I cannot thank you enough for this moment.
There are legions of people. Go out there and tell your friends and retweet it or whatever. But get the word out that there are people like that. There's a name for them. There's been a name for them since the Renaissance. Of course, they've existed since way before the Renaissance. And
in fact, if you look up Renaissance, you'll see polymath.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, I was hoping Kiki. Yes, Kiki. Good. Kiki, come up here. I gotta ask you a Greek question, if you don't mind. If you're able, she may be busy doing something else, but I'm hoping that I'm sorry. Did we get her up here? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good.
She's coming up.
Kiki.
Hey, George.
Welcome. How you doing?
Hi, Kiki.
I know that I'm doing. I'm trying the best I possibly can. You know that.
Okay. Good. Yes. I have a very specific question for you. I've been meaning to look this up, but maybe you have some insight into it. What does the word math mean in Greek? I don't want to take a stab at it. I don't want to put words in your mouth. But the word, maybe I don't know if it's an
Learning.
ancient Greek word or a modern Greek word. But math, as distinct from mathematics, I know it doesn't mean mathematics, but the root math. Are you aware of what it means, or have you studied that, or maybe it's just classical Greek? I don't know. You said, Dr. M, you said learning?
I became aware of that from yourself.
Yeah, well, that's what
so
Wikipedia said. So I want to verify it.
Oh, okay.
The word matheno, which is
that's it,
means to. It means to learn.
That help me. Teach me. Matheno.
Matheno means to learn.
Matheno. Am I pronouncing it right? Matheno.
Matheno. Correct.
Matheno. Good. Okay, that's it. That's in our repertoire now. That's gonna
right. Math would be something that I am learning. I guess it's a continuation. So I.
Yes.
You know that you get Greek to discover because Greek, right? Everything is Greek or Latin.
Mm-hmm.
But I see the word matheno. Mathema is a lesson. The word mathema is a matheno is the verb that it actually means to learn. That's the very definition.
That's great. Because back in the day, in the Renaissance, there was no, as I understand it, maybe I'm wrong, but it's kind of hard to believe. But as I understand it, there was no separate discipline of mathematics. Mathematics wasn't about computation. It was about It was about learning. It was about learning the nature of the universe. How did the universe work? It wasn't about computation.
Right, because the ancient philosophers, when they were learning and when they were observing, and trust me, Greek philosophers had so much time because they had a lot of people. They had there were a lot of people that were for lack of a better word, they were there to help them with their lives. I don't want to use any verbs.
Yep.
It triggering. So they had people that were helping them around with the daily living. I'm trying to describe
it was about it was about having a good life, having a good, full, meaningful life.
Right. So they had a good, meaningful life. They had help from other people that were helping them around. And so that way they could walk around, being around amongst other people. They used to go they used to be stoics, right? So they used to in the city square, and they used to have very, very long talks about the simplest thing. For example,
but I don't think they called themselves philosophers, though. They were just teachers. They just knew stuff, and they could help you live life. And now we have biologists, and we have neurobiologists, and we have biochemists, and we have physicians, and it's all the university, by the way, used to be the original universities were people who got together and their knowledge complemented each other, but there were no separate studies of science and art and math, and it was all the same body of knowledge. It was all together, and they all informed each other. So they were all kind of natural polymaths. But now we have to do that intentionally.
Right, and people used to learn from each other.
Yeah,
because the different disciplines, actually the niches that we have now, were later on created because there was a need for people to be more to specialize, because we needed people that would be able to attract and to work on something very, very specific. So that's why we have the different specialties. And I'm taking this as an example, talking about medicine mostly in my mind, because for me, that is a field that's easily understandable.
Yeah.
And it does include also teachers. There are teachers that have their own niche, because these are professions that you do need be a specialist in. Not only that, there are so many other professions. However, I'm bringing these two up as examples that examples make.
Yep.
Yeah, so I hope that helps my
Yes, it
knowledge.
definitely helps. Thank you so much for coming up. I know you're in the middle of some other things too. And we have a lot of people from the Medici community and who are polymaths, and people who aren't in that community who I just happen to know are definitely polymaths, Ron and Donna and a bunch of other people. And Raquel is also a member of the community. Rachel, I'm sorry, who I know is a polymath. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say, Rachel. Rachel's a
Hey, y'all. I'm just here to listen today. Thank you,
rattle off
Go.
some of the things you are in 1 or 2 words each. Just rattle them
Oh,
off. This is going to be cool. Go ahead. What are you, Rachel?
I am an author, probably first. I've published 7 books, all nonfiction. I own my own business, which focuses, it's bad writing media. So, I help people with writing, publishing, book marketing, social media.
Rattle them off, the short version. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. I worked corporate America for 17 years, hated it, but learned how to treat people and how not to treat people.
Yep.
And I think those would be the 2 main ones for me, would be author and business
and they
owner.
they all inform each other. I've learned a lot from Rachel and about publishing and books and all kinds of things. So and she just put out a wonderful guide to Twitter Spaces, by the way. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, what a great!
Yeah, I don't know if you want to put it in the nest. Yeah, she quoted Dr. M and myself and a bunch of us, and you put that up in the nest. Is a really good guide to running better spaces. So one of the, you and Kiki triggered something in my mind that there is something interesting about polymaths that kind of goes unnoticed. Although some people do recognize this, they are really, really, really interesting people. You are rarely going to find a boring polymath. You can find boring specialists all over the place. Boring specialists are under every rock. They're all over the place. And they will bore you to death because they can only speak about their specialty. Unless you're passionately interested in their specialty, they're going to bore you silly. And polymaths usually are very, very, very... Now, dilettantes are also boring because they're, as we said, a mile wide and an inch deep. They don't have a lot to say about things that are of any great insight and interest. So they're boring people too. But the specialists can be really, really... Well, I've met specialist magicians who only specialize in one particular thing, and they are so boring. Oh my God. It's just, unless you're into that particular thing, you can't even talk to them. I know one coin guy, you can only talk to him about coins and certain kinds of coins and certain kinds of coin tricks. And that's it. He's like the world's leading expert. Everybody knows him. Everybody's taught everybody how to do those things. But that's all he does. That's all he does. And he's like the world's most boring person. I won't name him. Michael, we're just jumping in. Don't wait for me to call on you. Just jump in when you have something to say. If now is the appropriate time, go ahead. If not, wait and just jump in when you want. I'll give you a second.
I just thought...
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks, George. Thanks for the space. Interesting topic.
Thank you.
I thought you might enjoy to know a little bit about the group I'm involved with.
Yeah, wait, stop for a second. His bio says interest in consciousness, geopolitics, energy, waves, nature. I mean, that sounds like Da Vinci. I mean, that sounds like that is a polymath statement if I ever heard one.
I've gone down all sorts of different paths.
Interesting colloidal silver. Okay.
So anyway, I'm currently working with a group at the ANU, which is Australia's top-ranked research university.
Now, before you go on, I want you to tailor what you're saying to help whatever you are going to describe about what you do, couch it in a way that helps us understand polymathery, being a polymath, or what a polymath is, or the care and feeding of polymaths. Okay.
Okay. So
that's a challenge.
So I have, I personally, I have a diverse range of backgrounds. So my first degree was a Bachelor of Business in Accounting and Finance, worked in the corporate world, then small family business, got disillusioned with that, worked as a carer, and then did a degree in psychology, then honours.
So what have you learned from all that? It's going to be a long list of things that we probably don't have time for, but what have you learned? That's what I'm interested in. Whatever they are, whatever the specifics are, I want to know, what did you learn from learning and mastering so many different fields? Forgive me for interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Look, I think there's a lot that overlaps in the different areas that I'm involved in, and you can certainly bring different skill sets to an environment that they're not expected in.
Different skill sets. Flag that. That's really, really important. Go on. I just wanted to make sure that didn't fly by unemphasized. Different. You can. What did you say? You can apply different. You said you can certainly bring different skill sets to an environment that are not affected by by the skill sets.
Well, where they're not expected.
Right, expected.
So
right.
Yeah, where they're not expected. So, particularly say when you're working with people with disabilities, they mightn't be able to manage financial situations, but generally a carer that works in that area doesn't have that skill set. Or more broadly, the family's got people suffering from mental health issues and having the psych background rather than just being a carer. Mm-hmm. Helps to guide them. So
yes.
But I guess what I'd like to share is the group that I'm working. Well, I'm working with several groups now, but in the group I'm involved with, we've just got a retired professor from Oxford who did his PhD in under 12 months. Mm-hmm. He got 2 professorships in linguistics and philosophy. His last year at Oxford, he was the Wild Professor of Mental Philosophy and specialised in delusions. We've got another person who's just retired too, who's a neuroscientist.
So what can we learn from that?
Well, what I really enjoy about our group is we meet fortnightly, usually to help students in their honours program, but you just get a real diversity of thought and experience.
Okay, let's pause on that. That's another thing I've observed about polymaths. When you get, and we haven't talked about that yet here, it's really important. It's actually earth-shakingly important in a way I'll tell you in a second. When you get 3 or more polymaths together, even 2 or more polymaths together, you reach what I call psychological critical mass. You reach an explosion. It's a chain reaction, literally and figuratively, a chain reaction of ideas that results in an explosion and something different. Now, I've been a student of this for a long, long, long time. And I can rattle off a list. I have a gigantic list of about 30. But off the top of my head, when polymaths were deliberately brought together, you had things like the Continental Congress, resulted in the Constitution of the United States. You had the Bauhaus movement. You had the Disney Company and Microsoft and Apple. You had the Algonquin Round Table of authors. Great, every single one of them a great and famous author. You had the Manhattan Project. All the greatest physicists and scientists in the whole country were literally scooped up by the FBI and flown out to Los Alamos and sequestered, some against their will, some quite happily, for months and even more than a year. And they revolutionized physics, resulted in the atom bomb, and resulted in nuclear power. So some bad, some good. But every time that seems to have happened, and I used to do it in focus groups, I would get the world's leading experts in various fields together, and it was a different kind of group discussion. It was just unbelievable because they knew what they knew, and they could ask way better questions of each other than I could ask them, and they knew the limits of each other's knowledge. So they'd say things like, okay, I have point A and point B and point C, but for point D, I don't want to talk about it because Joe here is the world's leading expert in that, so I want to hand off to Joe. And Joe would tell me about his area. And it would go back and forth like a football, like a volleyball. And it was just unbelievable. I've seen that with psychologists. I've seen that with, so when you get polymaths together, it's like the group is a polymathic group. It's not a group of specialists. It's not a group of people who are all doing the same thing. It is a multidisciplinary. And if they can manage to talk to each other constructively and even in good humor, and as the Algonquin Roundtable did, as very close personal friends, and Manhattan Project guys became close personal friends, there's some stuff that goes on that is just utterly magical. And the world needs more of that. And Elon Musk is doing that with his companies. He's bringing together people who are just absolutely off the charts, unbelievable. And so is Google. Google doesn't hire for specifics. They don't hire for the job. They hire for the person. There's a certain type of person they want. And they say, okay, now what job should we give them? Isn't that crazy? They hire the person. And they don't know what job they're hiring them for. That is just totally nuts. And it really works. It doesn't mean it works for everybody in every situation. They have managed to learn how to pull it off. And it's utterly brilliant. I used to hire that way. I would be much more interested in the person if they pushed back in an employment interview, if they made a joke that was appropriate, that told me they were creative, if they had multiple interests, I knew they'd be able to bring much more to any given problem than if they were a specialist in that field only. So that's the groups of polymaths are absolutely unbelievable. And it's easy to get them together because they love to do it. It is so much fun.
George, I think last night when you, Samantha, and I were having a discussion, I experienced that for the first time, and it just really blew my mind how did last night and this morning via the DMs. That was a revelation to me, how quickly it was developed.
Yeah, we were kicking around the whole idea of polymath, and what does the word mean, and should we ever be using the word? Is it a weird poison word? Is it a good word? Is it a bad word? What do we make of it? If most people don't know what the word means, is that an advantage in that we can define it any way we want? Or is it a disadvantage in that it'll turn people off? We went on and on and on for hours about the possibilities and what it was. And we just had an incredible meeting of the minds, sparked each other, challenged each other's ideas. There was absolutely no ego involved, no desire to be right or wrong, just examining an issue. And yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that happens all the time when you get polymaths together. It's really something to be. And it's too bad that in most conferences you get these panel discussions and you get these serial panels. One person talks and gives a little speech, 10-minute speech, and then the next person talks and gives a 10 or 15-minute speech. And they just do that serially. One at a time, and that's the end of the thing. They don't sit there talking to each other and quizzing each other. And hey, what did you work on? What's the latest thing about such and such? I heard you were working on such and such problem. How's that going? Where are you stuck? What new insights and breakthroughs have you gotten? Where do you speculate this is going? Where do you think you'll find the answer? On and on and on. They ask those kind of questions that most people wouldn't think of asking. And it's just amazing. So I think in spaces, we're going to get more and more and more people who are really informed. And we've got a bunch of polymaths. We've had in this group, a whole bunch of polymaths have jumped up. I had no expectation one way or another. I didn't know if we're going to attract any polymaths. We're going to attract people who are only intimidated by the idea of polymaths. I'm going to only attract people who have no idea what the word means and want to find out more about it.
I can't wait till the next one.
Thank you. Oh yeah, we're going to do some more for sure. And there are, I think there are needs for public and private communities. I think there are going to be communities of polymaths in some, I hesitate to say specialties, but I think you know what I mean by that, in slightly more concentrated areas. But let's say you were trying to improve spaces. How would you improve? Spaces are being, and Twitter Spaces is being constructed by engineers. They are taking an engineering approach, and they're worrying about all kinds of things like audio fidelity. There's more than enough audio fidelity. They don't have to improve it, but they're working on improving it, and they're going to give stereo, which is going to have no effect whatsoever, and on and on. But if they had a team of psychologists, group dynamics psychologists and other psychologists, if they had educational specialists, there was a profession, is literally a profession. It's got an association, it's got credentials, it's got hundreds of books written in it called group facilitation. You can go find websites on group facilitation. Sessionlab.com has thousands of exercises that you can do in groups, that people who run workshops, for instance, for corporations, workshops on team building and problem solving and decision making and all that, companies do those kinds of things. There are people who come in and do those. They're called facilitators, and they know a lot. And also they're called in for conflict resolution. When you have a gigantic conflict, labor union contract, all kinds of conflict situations, there are facilitators who only specialize in that kind of thing. Well, they have different needs for the way spaces should be engineered. So you got all those people together, you would have a rate of innovation. Now, Elon Musk knows about that kind of stuff. He knows how to do that. That's why I'm so excited about what's going to happen with Twitter, because he knows how to. The rate of innovation of Twitter is, I hope I don't get kicked off the platform for saying this, is pathetically slow. Even granted my ignorance of programming and how hard it is, I appreciate, but I don't fully understand how hard it is to implement the simplest little feature, ripples through the system, and has all kinds of implications that are hard to anticipate. And all of that, I get all that. I get most of that. And I also get that I don't get all of that. But the rate of innovation is pathetic. The fact that we can't read each other's names right now. I mean, they should have, any psychologist they had working on the team would tell them, you can't have names down there that get cut off, that can't be read. Any real person that wasn't an engineer would tell them that. Anybody would tell them you need to have obvious talker ID, have a gigantic green circle around every picture when somebody's talking that's blinking, and on and on and on. There are dozens of features that I, as an experienced audio moderator and other experienced facilitators, would just come up with immediately. They'd come up with in a 1-hour brainstorming session. So that's the nature of the cross-pollination of polymaths. That's what happens, and that's what we really, really need. Anybody have any final thoughts they want to talk about? Because I'm going to get down off my soapbox, and let's hear from anybody else who wants to make any comments.
George,
Hey,
question.
Sure.
Hey, what's up, George? How you
Hi,
doing?
what's your name?
just Ray,
Ray.
Scatter Chatter, I was there.
Yes,
what is polymath exactly? Just layman's
yes,
terms.
okay,
I
yeah,
came
for
in at
anybody
the
who's just
end.
joined us, a polymath
Thank you.
is simply somebody who is multiply accomplished in multiple fields. Usually it's defined as 3 or more fields. They have achieved a degree of a significant degree of mastery. They are well versed in a variety of different fields, including the arts, the sciences, etc. The so-called soft people skills, the hard science skills, etc., etc. So they've mastered at least 3. There's no commonly accepted number. There's no commonly accepted degree of proficiency. We just know him when we see him. You know, we know Da Vinci when we see him. We know a junior Da Vinci when we see her. So it's somebody multiply versed. And as Kiki was pointing out, the polymath, the math in there, help me again, Kiki, comes from the Greek word mathos?
Matheno, which means learn.
Oh, matheno. Thank you. I got to learn that.
Matheno.
Matheno. Write that down, Dr. M. I don't have a place where I go. Write it down so we can practice it.
I will send it.
We're going to practice it with Kiki. You're right. We're going to practice it with Kiki on the next Medici thing. Anyway.
Thanks for defining that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. But matheno means learning. It doesn't mean mathematical calculation. And the Renaissance people were learners, and they thought you were not well learned if you only knew one field. You have to know all the fields because they interact, and they have things to teach each of you. So that's what I want to bring back to the world. Not exclusively, not saying that everybody has to be a polymath. Again, forgive me for repeating myself for those who have heard it. We need the specialists. We need the generalists. So we need the single-minded specialists who are passionate about one thing and eat, live, sleep, breathe that one thing from morning till night. They are passionate. They're fanatics in a good sense about it. We need them desperately, and I applaud them and I admire them. I'm in awe of them, and I ain't one of them. But I admire them as only someone who isn't can admire them. On the other hand, they don't admire us so much. They get intimidated by the polymaths. Speaking generally, of course, there are major,
and that's been since the Enlightenment.
Yeah,
you know, where logic took precedence over creativity.
Right, Galileo almost got burned at the stake.
Right. Yeah.
he questioned a few things like he supported Kepler's the idea that the Earth revolved around the sun. I mean, what a crazy idea that was. You see the sun coming up in the east and setting in the west. You see that the sun is revolving around the Earth. It's obvious. You see it with your own eyes. That's the way my book, Secrets of Word of Mouth Marketing, started. It said it is obvious but untrue that the sun revolves around the Earth. And it is obvious but untrue that marketing revolves around advertising. That's why I started my book. But I
would love to think about the problems that we would like to solve with our polymathery and bring them like to the next time you have one of these things. And
by all means,
share your
yeah. You know, I was thinking that some of the world's biggest problems, they almost by default, I mean, they require a multidisciplinary approach because they are just, so the environmental problems, just our biggest problems, they cannot be fixed by any one discipline. They require multidisciplinary.
Yeah, and Einstein said that problems cannot be solved on the level at which they were created. Something like that. I think that's his quote. And he's right. But most people don't understand that and don't understand why that is. But yeah, taking that specifically, lawyers have a particular, it's very instructive to look at the different problem-solving styles and methods of the different disciplines. I could speak for hours on this, but the brief version is that the lawyers solve problems by prohibitions, by rules. Rules are one way of solving certain types of problems. You can't do that, and if you do that, we're going to punish you. That's basically one way of containing human behavior. Certainly not the only way, as Donna, the psychologist down there, knows. It's only one way, and it's actually a damn lousy way. But that's the way. So legislators, most of them, are lawyers. You know, in Congress there are a few doctors, there are a few others, a few business people, but most of them are lawyers. Most of them solve problems by making laws. That's what they're there for. They're paid to make laws. That's their job. Make laws. But laws are not the answer to a lot of problems.
And they're not enforced.
Exactly.
They just keep making a bunch of laws, and none of them are ever enforced, which means
and even
that
if they
don't really exist.
Yeah. Exactly. And even if they're not enforced, if they were enforced, they wouldn't solve the problem. So if you had Congress, and this is the way it was in the days of the Congress, they were all farmers and there were Jeffersons and Franklins and all they were polymaths, and they had they had studied the sciences, they had studied the arts, etc., etc., etc. So when they came up with a problem, should we allow people to have these rights? What are rights? Nobody really had asked that question. What are rights? And they came up with this wild experiment. Basically, let people do whatever the hell they want to do, and prohibit the use of physical force, and there's a few simple things you prohibit, and let them do whatever they want, based on the ideas of capitalism and other things. And they basically
said, let certain people do what they want, and other people not do what they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that was the fundamental ideas, that it was riddled with all kinds of flaws. Absolutely, no question about it. But it was a wild, bold experiment that really worked well in many ways. And I agree with you, Kara, did not work well in some other ways. The whole idea that we had slavery just freaks me out completely. But, so in a so-called system of freedom, we had this thing called slavery, is just beyond. But the point is that these multifaceted people is another terminology we can use. These multifaceted people saw things from so many different perspectives, and the way they reasoned things out, you read the Federalist Papers, it's unbelievable the way they debated these issues. And all kinds of things we think they didn't think about, they debated at length. What should be states' rights, what should be individual rights, what should be reserved to the states and the individuals, versus the whole idea of a constitution, which did that. Nobody had done that before. They invented so many things. They invented like a dozen different things. Why? Because they were all polymaths. That's why I mentioned before the Continental Congress. We don't have that kind of thing anymore. We have only lawyers. Speaking, we have mostly only lawyers. And lawyers can't solve that kind of problem. There are other kinds of problems they can solve, but they can't solve the kind of problems that they're struggling with and they're doing such a bad job on. So anyway, that's it. This is really quite amazing. We're going to certainly have to have some more spaces on polymaths. What do you say, Dr. M?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing, and hearing LL's, if I'm addressing you by the right name, her.
Yes, that's fine.
What she just said just fuels me completely. And what Kara said, and several of the other people here said, just really makes me. I think the polymaths of the world need. Maybe our slogan should be polymaths of the world unite. The polymaths need validation. We've taken enough crap, enough abuse. We really need validation.
Yes, George, and it should be encouraged rather than it is currently, worldwide, pretty much for the most part, it is dismissed and discouraged.
And ridiculed.
But actually, kind of like in a way, I'm kind of beginning to realize how much the solution to our biggest problems depends on polymathery and how it should be, in fact, encouraged. And over time, many more polymaths, developed basically so as to be able to tackle our more complex problems more effectively, basically, because they would cover those gaps between the skills. And also, of course, just a person who's specialized, you just don't know, if you don't know anything about another discipline. I mean, you could never even propose or conceive of a multidisciplinary solution involving anything other than your niche.
I think what we'll do is maybe also I'm going to teach some workshops on how to do that. How do you use multidisciplinary problem solving? There are some very specific techniques that I have included in MindSkills that I learned from Synectics people and some other problem solving companies, done their workshops, and there are ways of deliberately saying, okay, this engineering problem we have over here, how has the world of biology solved that problem? That problem in principle. What's the problem in principle? Like closing a thermos bottle. We want to have a cap on a thermos bottle that can't be lost. So how do we design that? This is an actual example. They said, what in nature is a opening that closes without a cap? And somebody said a horse's anus has a tissue that rotates around and closes it. And they invented a thermos bottle cap, as horrendous as that sounds, that did that. And then some engineer came along with a better solution so that it only lasted for a little while. But it was a legitimate solution to a particular problem that one discipline informed the other discipline. That's the point. And there are gazillions of examples of that. And there are ways to do it deliberately. There are exercises to do it, where individuals can do it with themselves, teams can do it with each other. There are specific techniques. So I think we need to have MindSkills specifically for, what I'm going to work on is MindSkills for polymaths, and we also need MindSkills for specialists. Even though I'm not a specialist, I think I can figure out, and I've interviewed enough specialists to know that they have some different techniques than we have. They definitely different techniques. No time to really go into those, but yeah, I think we should continue this and openly acknowledge that distinction between the specialists, the monomaths versus polymaths. How's that? Monomaths. Mono learners versus poly learners. Okay, folks, thank you very much for joining us. Been a ball for me. Let's see, we've gone 2 hours, 23 minutes. So those of you who joined later, listen to the beginning of the replay. Really some interesting stuff there. I can't wait. We'll write it up and put it in the MindSkills playbook too. So thank you all for participating, especially the people who came up as speakers. And of course, Dr. M, who kind of pushed me to do this and volunteered to help me out in running it. So I do thank you all very, very much. And see you again on another space. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Good day.
Bye-bye.